Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on the quantification of digital user experience. A good user experience is key to the success of all digital applications, but what is good user experience to begin with? How do you measure it, rate it, compare it? I'm pretty sure we'll find some interesting answers today, and it's my great pleasure to introduce our experts to the panel. As you already see, it's just the three of us today. Unfortunately, Holger Seubert from SAP needed to drop from the panel due to sickness, and we're sending him all the best wishes and hope he gets well soon. To do some housekeeping, this session will be recorded, so you will receive a link afterwards via your registration email that you used to sign up for the panel. So no worries if you need to drop out or your connection is getting lost. You will be able to ask questions during the whole session. You can use the embedded chat functionality of the GoToWebinar tool to ask questions, and we'll try to answer as many of them during the session, but we will have also a designated Q&A part in the end. The overall session is planned for 30 to 45 minutes, depending on your questions, your input, our discussions. And with a little housekeeping out of the way now, it's my great pleasure to introduce once again our speakers of today, Kim Bonavia and Carolin Metzger. Kim Bonavia is a fully trained human-centered UX designer and researcher. She's the UX design strategy lead at Bourne Digital in Melbourne, and she's also the manager and facilitator of the App House Experience Design Center. Her goal is to delight users with amazing experience, and Bourne Digital is doing that by partnering with major organizations like SAP, Apple, and Microsoft to deliver those solutions. When I stalked Kim on Twitter, I found out that Kim is a real cycling warrior and a Tiger Army member. So Kim, what's the Tiger Army?
Hi, Christian. Good morning, everyone. Here in Australia, our football is Australian rules football, or AFL, and I follow a football team called the Richmond Tigers, and all of the members are known as the Tiger Army. So nothing military related. It's all of the very dedicated and loyal fans. So we've had many years of no success, but the last 4 years we've won 3 premierships. So very dedicated and relieved Tiger Army member. Thanks for having me too, by the way.
Then we're all
Yes.
crossing the fingers that you keep on the winning streak.
Yes, that's right.
Jumping to Carolin. Carolin Metzger, she's the head of design at Sovanta AG, and she's also managing the App House location in beautiful Hamburg City. Right next to the Elbphilharmonie, so you should all visit it. And with 10 years of experience in optimizing user experience in the enterprise field, she's also a really good expert to have on the panel. She is working a lot in the field of design-driven development, in user research methods, and yeah, maybe a little personal story, what most of you don't know. She's an adrenaline junkie, and yeah, she is a real roller coaster connoisseur, traveling the world to find the most exciting rides everywhere. So I guess for you, it's a pretty hard year this year, Carolin, but talking about roller coasters and theme parks, what can we learn about user experience, observing the masters of user experience at places like Disney and Co?
Yeah, so good morning, first of all, and thanks for having me here. And thank you for the nice introduction. Yeah, so as a UX designer, yeah, my annual Disneyland pass is not only the only link to Walt Disney. So some call him also the first UX designer. So if you have ever been to Disneyland or places like that, you will notice that everything is about the perfect user experience. So everything is designed down to the exact details. So even how the cast members are acting, are talking, are smiling, are waving. There will be never 2 Mickey Mouse or Mickey Mice out there in the park. So even if they're miles away. So, I mean, let's face the truth, Mickey Mouse is not a real person. So there are cast members, probably 10, 15 ones with 10, 15 costumes of Mickey Mouse, but they will never be out there at the same time. So if Mickey Mouse is on a parade, you can't visit him in his house. So it's all about creating special moments, unique experiences, and that you can't experience somewhere else. And yeah, this is what should be done to create products, and what we probably can learn from Walt Disney. Yeah.
Very cool details. Yeah, maybe let's start into the topic a little bit deeper, and yeah, let's start on a high altitude. Kim, why is user experience important in the first place when designing products?
User experience relates to emotions. So yeah, and it has a direct correlation to adoption. So if a user does not have a good user experience, they're less likely to, they'll get more likely to be frustrated and less likely to use the product. So a good user experience is about using the product, continue using the product. Even if you have to, you at least want to be delighted and enjoy using the product. So it is really important, you know, especially with a global world being smaller and smaller, there's more competition. You need to make sure the users are delighted and there is a good user experience so that they will use your product, because if not, they will go elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Can you dig a little bit deeper into what makes a great user experience? So yeah, what are the takeaways? What can you do to provide this experience?
Yeah, you know, in the App House methodology and in so many user experience design industry, we talk about that sweet spot between feasibility, desirability, and viability. And you know, whilst you also need to meet business goals, you also need to meet user goals. So from a user perspective, the user really needs to resonate with what it is that you're designing. So you need to bring the user on that journey every step of the way and involve that user so that they can, you know, they can make sure that they've had a voice in this product being designed and developed. You've got to bring them on board and on that journey.
Great. Yeah, I guess we all want to build products that are satisfying and easy to use, but how can we know that's the case? Maybe a question for you, Carolin.
Yeah, I mean, Kim already mentioned it. So it has to be done by applying kind of a user-centered design approach, which is also done by places like, for example, the App House. That means you really focus on the user, you really focus on the user needs when creating products, or even one step further, the human-centered design approach. So of course, most users are humans, but in this approach, in the human-centered one, you are focusing even more on human aspects like emotions, like feelings, basic human needs. And yeah, to do so, it requires also a big portion of empathy, of course. So you need to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the user. You have to know the user, the pains, the wishes, of course, by doing user research, like Kim already also mentioned. So you should involve all stakeholders. You should involve the user from the beginning on in the design process, and also yeah, the user needs to be involved all the way through via user testings, interviews, feedback loops, and so on. So of course, not only in creating products, also if you have products that are already rolled out, you want to make sure that your product has a good user experience. You have to involve the user. And yeah, this can't be measured via operational data or behavioral data. So this just tells you what happens, but not why. So if you want to know why it happens, yeah, you have to ask the user. A good example is, for example, performance of an application. You can measure the real performance of an application. But if you want to know how good the user experience is, the perceived performance is much more interesting. And for this, you have to ask the user, what is the perceived performance? So yeah, and there is a difference between application that works like expected, or applications that really make fun to use and create emotions. And you should always aim for or if you aim for the best possible user experience, you need to create products which a user loves.
Yeah, talking about this quantification or evaluation of UX you just mentioned, can a good experience really be measured, or is it even possible to measure with evidence than rather opinions? Because it sounds a little bit like that. Maybe that's a question for you, Kim.
Yeah, as Carolin said, you understand the users, understand their pain points and their needs, and through that, that's where the opportunity is to solve that. But then to quantify, you would typically undertake your usability testing and as part of bringing those users on the journey, test as often as possible your solution with them. So that's one part of evaluating the user experience. Sometimes there are emotions involved with that, or they may say that some features are working for them and some aren't. So to take the emotions out, typically we would use, in addition to usability testing, we would use an analytics such as Nielsen-Norman heuristic analysis, which we find really it sticks to facts. Working off their 10 heuristics, it's really just analyzing as opposed to the emotion. But that is generally after you've done the usability testing, because the usability testing really still bringing those users along the journey. And then we find that bringing usability testing as well as some heuristic analysis will really help to quantify and help make sure that it's not just emotion based. You're taking out the emotions in evaluating the good user experience. Do you find you do anything like that, Caroline?
Yeah, I mean, there is there are different ways of really measuring kind of user experience, more with a qualitative or quantitative aspect. Of course, and really important is when you can quantify the qualitative data. So then you can start to compare, then you can start to measure over time, to track, but there is also where it gets more and more into methodology and standardization. And of course, this is already really research heavy, and you need to know what to use, what tools to use, and what methodology to use.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, I guess the last thing many designers in the field of user experience think of is statistics, I guess. So in fact, we know that many design practitioners in the field of design, they find it appealing because you largely avoid those cold numbers and using Excel and using statistical tools. So instead, a lot of us love to focus on the soft skills and the so-named qualitative activities. Although a lot of design usability activities are certainly qualitative, I guess the impact of good and bad design can, in the end, be really quantified in conversations, completion rates, sales. So it's no surprise that increasingly more and more usability practitioners and researchers are expected to quantify the benefits of their efforts. But how do you choose the right metrics to do so? So how to choose metrics that will capture important aspects of your user experience? How to tackle that? Maybe Caroline.
Yeah, so I mean, a metric, like you said, is always a kind of a tool to measure performance of a specific part of user experience, and it's always quantitative data, so that you can compare it, that you be able to track the performance, the change over time. And of course, it's vitally important to ensure user experience design decisions are made, evaluated using fair evidence rather than just opinions. And this is not only important for us as UX designer, but also for product owners who has to make decisions. And there are a variety of UX metrics you can measure. also metrics like, for example, the performance of your website, the visitors of your website. This is a metric, but does this anyhow relate to the user experience of your website? Is it important? What tells you? So it's important to know that there is a difference. I mentioned it already between the behavioral metrics and the attitudinal metrics. So the behavioral are the ones like, I just mentioned, the operational ones like number of visits, the bounce rate. They're already collected oftentimes. But really interesting is it when you collect the attitudinal metrics. So where you quantify the qualitative data. And that means, we have to ask the user, collect more experience information, experience data, with questions like, does the application give you all the required feedback? Do you like the design and all this information? And there are already methodology scores, questions out there. Kim also mentioned some of them. There are scores like the Net Promoter Score, maybe some of you know, or the System Usability Scale, which is measuring with 10 questions the usability of an application. But these metrics are still just measuring one specific aspect of user experience. And so what we have done, for example, we've created for our daily work or for our customers a set of UX metrics that pay attention to all that facets of user experience, but particularly for business applications, because there is also slightly change or a difference between measuring business applications or measuring websites. You have to use slightly different metrics for this. And when we compiled the set of metrics, it was especially important, like I said, to consider all aspects of user experience that are relevant for business applications. And of course, to also test it, to redo it, to validate it. And in the end, this brought us to 36 metrics. We've grouped them in different categories, in 12 categories like feedback, efficiency, interoperability, and so on. And these metrics, we are using them, for example, to measure and validate the user experience of business applications. Mm-hmm. But like I said, you always have to check what's your goal, what's your application, what do you want to measure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you briefly touched this topic of benchmarking. Can you explain real quick for our audience what is benchmarking and its benefits?
Yeah, I mean, benchmarking, so the basis is actually the same. So you have to get quantitative data first. So it's a quantitative evaluation of the user experience of a product or service. But the goal is to compare the measured performance against a meaningful standard. And this can be a former version of the product. This can be a competitor. This can be an industry standard. And of course, this offers many benefits. You can track the improvement over time. You can determine whether your design changes have a positive impact. Of course, hopefully it is positive, but you can track the impact. You can demonstrate value of design also to stakeholders or calculate return on invest. And for this, it also helps you as kind of a decision-making method. So this is the main focus of benchmarking, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I would also add that it's also a benefit in that you can, in our experience, determine from either a large audience or a small audience. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. You know, like obviously a large audience gives you a probably more holistic view, but even you get a really good understanding from even just a small contribution. So I think that's a really good benefit from the benchmarking as well in our experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think sometimes you don't even know your audience, which is also quite interesting about this field of research. Yeah, we just heard it. The calculating the return on invest of user experience activities in general is quite hard. What's your take on it, guys?
Yeah, I mean, the return on invest is, yeah, more the strategic value of the user experience. So yeah, it shows you how the user experience changes impact business goals in that case. So yeah, as a designer, calculating the return on investment is super powerful to get, of course, the buy-in from management, from organization, because it shows the direct positive impact of UX on the business, not only on the user, and what is important for buying a buy-in. But yeah, there are a lot of different studies out there which shows or prove the enormous return on invest for user experience, like a study by Forrester, which has shown that every dollar invested in user experience brings $100 in return. So good ratio. But of course, to get the buy-in for your investment, you have to calculate your own return on invest. And many people, many designers are afraid of doing that. They think it's necessary to quantify the added value with the exact amount of money, or take into account every detail, every external influence. And of course, this would make it hard, but it isn't that complicated. So return on invest calculations aren't financial forecasts. So you can show the value of the improvement by comparing the investment without being a business administration expert. And what is important is to know where your weak points are of an application, and that this brings us back to measuring the user experience. And when you know where your weak points are, you know where to improve, what makes it much more easier to calculate the investment, and also yeah, in the end, the value of it. And so it's not that hard to even give a kind of a forecast on what is the value of your improvement.
Mm-hmm. Can you give some customer examples related to this topic regarding investments of UX, etc.?
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Christian. We've just recently worked with one of the largest Windows manufacturers in Australia. I didn't realize how big they were, but they're massive. And the actually, I since found out that my own home is built with those windows. But so what they were doing is, if customers wanted to, if they broke a window or needed to add fly screens or the like, or some spare parts, a new door handle or a new window handle, they had to physically phone the office. The administration staff had to manually key in at the purchase. So we worked with this company, undertaking a user-centered approach, involving users throughout the entire journey. And we've recently gone live in the last 3 months. And I've found out just this week that the sales for the customers to be able to self-serve, to go onto that website themselves, enter their own address, and it will bring up exactly how many rooms you have in your house. It knows how many windows you have, how many doors, how many fly screens, and you're able to rename the rooms yourself. So you can tailor, customize, and you can go in and say, I want new windows for bedroom 1 and the kitchen, and they'll send it over to you. It's really simple, very intuitive, and so from a return on investment perspective, they know it's working, because the sales that have come in just in the last 3 months have exceeded their anticipated revenue that they projected for the next 12 months. So they're 9 months ahead on their revenue just in the first 3 months of inception. So it's really important, that return on investment. And to add to what you were saying, Carolin, once you are able to quantify that return on investment, it's so much easier to go back to the business for future use cases, future initiatives, because they've seen what a success at every dollar they've put in. They can see that $100 that they've gotten back. So it's so much easier to then continue that user-centered approach across the organization.
Quite impressive numbers, that's for sure. Yeah, we
Mm.
heard a lot about the methods now, but what role do digital tools play in the quantification of UX? Is that something that's purely done by hand and doing paper-based surveys, or how can we also benefit from digital tools here? Carolin?
Yeah, there are probably multiple ways depending on the method, on the research method. But digital tools, of course, are a big help in the process, especially when you talk about the quantitative data, not the qualitative, because quantitative means you have to have more data. And so actually, I would say there are, to get quantitative data, there are three main steps in the process. So setting up the relevant set of metrics we've talked about to measure the user experience, for example, via a standardized survey, for example, then collecting all the data. And like I said, quantitative data, you should have multiple ones. So for example, in a survey, you talk about 30 users, you should ask to get a valid number. And the last step is then finally to analyze the data. Including benchmarking, for example, or comparing. And all these steps, of course, are much easier with the help of digital tools. So there are multiple tools for user research, for conducting surveys, for conducting user testings. We have built our own tool to do the, I've talked about the metrics we have built, the set of metrics. So we have built a tool to use that as a standardized set or a standardized survey that the user or we can use it, but also our customers can use it out of the box. So they can, in the first step, create their survey with a standardized set of metrics. So you don't have to rephrase questions or combining the metrics, deciding what you need. So everything is just, validated, ready to use, send out to the customer. Data collection, of course, like I said, it's much easier with a tool. For this, we're using a tool for we're using Qualtrics for that. Probably a lot of you know Qualtrics. So it's a survey tool, and the survey technology behind it makes it really easy to collect the data, smooth and easy to use. So it works on all devices, multiple languages, and if you collect experience data from users, you should make it as easy as possible for them to give you that data, to access the survey. And here, tools, digital tools like Qualtrics, for example, are really helpful. And in the end, of course, in the analyzing phase, if you collect a lot of data, tools help you if they're combining it, if they're structuring it, if they're aggregating it on different levels. This is also something we're doing with our tool, with our UX score. So we are aggregating it on different levels. We're building a kind of visualization of the result, what is really good if you want to know where are your strengths and your weaknesses when you want to compare the different areas of user experience, the different aspects. And of course, if you want to do benchmarking, you have to collect data, and this doesn't work on paper. So you need to have a digital basis when you want to compare to industry standards, when you want to compare your applications. You have to collect the data, you have to have this data. And so it's a huge benefit to have digital tools for things like benchmarking and comparison.
So you could even include those tools into your actual applications and not just send out emails to all your possible users, right?
Yeah, of course. So we had a client just recently who said, I don't know my my users, so I don't have an email address, I can't contact them. So we said, okay, then just include the link to the survey in your application. So they brought in a button just in the current application which says, please give us feedback to the user experience. At first we thought, okay, will really somebody click that button? But we were really surprised. There were a lot of responses. A lot of people clicked on the button. We got a lot of quantitative data and quantitative responses. So digital tools can help you with that, to reach a lot of users that you weren't able to reach with just paper-based solutions.
Yeah. Impressive. Yeah, especially in the enterprise space. We have a question from the audience which ties in quite nicely here. You just talked about the UX score, Caroline. So this pre-built question set to really measure and quantify user experience. And the question from the audience was if you use scores like SUS and UEQ within your questionnaires, or is it something completely different?
No, yeah, we have also used the standard ones as a kind of a basis, you can say, at least. I mean, these are validated and methods that are long already on the market, that are used already. We have used these ones and combined different methodologies. We have slightly changed it, we have adjusted it, but also built on top of it. Because like I said, the system usability score, for example, is mainly focused on usability, but we want to have the whole picture. In our case, we also have, for example, a category that is called joy of use, that is more about aesthetics, the emotions that arise, or a range of use that is more the technology aspect, the interoperability of systems, what is really important when you talk about business applications. So we have used established ones, but build on top of it, combined it, and make with that a whole picture of the user experience.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we just have a follow-up question to that one just coming in. What is your difficulties in collecting quantitative data across so many different digital platforms, and how to make the decision based on that? Because yeah, not all your tools, platforms, etc. are the same, right?
Yeah, I just mentioned it slightly in the beginning when I talked about metrics. So you have, if you're building a set of metrics, you have to differentiate between the different applications. So a website or a consumer application has to be measured with other metrics than a business application. For consumers, it's more about maybe the bounce rate also, and other focus areas. For business application, it's more about interoperability, connecting systems, and so on. So when we've built our set, we have mainly focused on business applications. And even if you're measuring a business application, you can't measure a complete platform, for example. That just doesn't work. You have to cut it in smaller pieces. You have to focus on single processes, for example, of a platform, to make these again comparable. So when you measure, you have to again consider your goal, what you want to measure. Don't try to measure everything at once. That doesn't work. So focus and keep in mind what kind of application you want to measure.
Yeah, I think the good thing about enterprise applications is that your users are forced to use it. They can't run away in comparison to like the consumer field.
Also, you can't ask them, or can't focus on things like the what's the English name for it? Wiederkehrrate. So are they coming back to your application? Because they're forced to use your application, so you don't need to ask them, right? So there's just a different focus on business applications than on consumer applications.
Yeah, cool. looking a little bit on the time, super exciting topics. I think we could discuss for hours, but yeah, maybe to wrap it up a little bit, and then I also want to open up for questions. What advice would you give to customers that are maybe new to the topic, want to start? So how should they tackle it?
Please, Kim, go.
I was looking at you. So mine would be to definitely involve the users and bring them on the journey. Don't be afraid. Following even on from what you were saying, Carolin, we had one of the largest retailers in Australia. Recently, we were working with across a suite of their applications that we needed to quantify. We did what you were suggesting. We broke it down and measured each one individually rather than as a whole, because there were separate users across all of them. For us, our difficulties were getting access to their users and to enough of them, because not all of them will give you responses. So it was just about getting enough user size, and then get that data set back. But so I'd say, get on that journey and involve as many as users as possible. Don't limit it. We found it quite limiting. We're only given a small amount of users, and then not all of them responded. So yeah, definitely bring as many of your users as possible and have that visibility. It's okay.
Be user focused. Get that one. I think Edward
Absolutely.
Tufte once famously said that there are only two industries who refer to the customers as users: drug dealers and tech companies. I think we're in a pretty good place here. Always focusing on the user. Carolin, any recommendations?
Yeah, so like Kim already said, so I mean, it is possible to measure user experience if you have the right tools, if you know how to do it. You shouldn't, as advice, you shouldn't start when you start measuring, you shouldn't try to redo everything at once. So measuring user experience can help you even to focus and to give you a roadmap on what to focus first and what to do first. So some people think that when they start measuring, then what to do with the results, and they don't know how to act on it. But if you measure and if you have it grouped in different categories, in different processes, then it gives you even a better roadmap on what to focus for the development of your product. So that can really help you to create this roadmap. And just start by measuring. There are tools out there. You don't have to be an expert.
Excellent. And to wrap things up, like, what's the future of UX like? What excites you? What drives you, brings you to work every morning?
What I love in my role as a strategy lead is education, is educating clients and business, whether it's their business or their IT departments or whatever, their HR departments, and involving them as to, well, what is user experience and how can that benefit us and our users? Usually it's obviously the enterprise users. So for me, what gets me out of bed is knowing that I'm helping shape and make a difference to them. I'm helping them with their education on that user-centered approach, and then they can, really change their mindset in their day-to-day work, and that can help, enhance their work, their productivity, and then the user experience that they're providing. So that's what I really love.
Carolin?
Yeah, so I think currently we're experiencing a really strong digital push, you can say. I mean, you see, we're all working from home. Events are streamed online. Companies are shift their presence to the virtual world. So it's really important if you want to stand out in this digital world to create extraordinary solutions And of course, then user experience becomes also a competitive advantage. So companies will probably be bolder to stand out from the crowd. There will be new ways of communicating, of collaborating in the digital world. And I think the boundaries between the real world and the digital worlds will become more and more blurred. And with that, also the complete user experience. So I think there will be new kinds of user experience will emerge. And this is really exciting as a user experience designer to see where this goes and to be part of this. And also of course help our clients to be part of this. So yeah.
Thanks a lot. And with that, I would love to open up the panel for additional questions from the audience. So feel free to use the chat console to send us some more questions. And we already have a couple of questions, so I will just hand them over to you to answer. Some of them we already touched, but yeah, maybe let's deep dive a little bit deeper here. So one question from the audience was, how do you relate qualitative and quantitative user data? I think, Carolin, you already touched a little bit on it, but maybe you can elaborate or summarize it once again for us.
Yeah, so I mean, we already said, so the question is quantitative and qualitative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, when you talk about our main focus here, the quantitative data, of course, you have to have different standardization methods and tools to have this qualitative data. You have to focus more and more on metrics. It's more analytics, you can say. If you have qualitative data, of course, it's much more important to have that empathy for the user, to use the right, of course, also the right methods to connect to the users, like the user interviews, user testing, stuff like that. But what is really interesting, we just saw it in a former project, in a customer project. We have done qualitative data, qualitative analysis first. We had interviews with some users. We did some user testing, so our user researcher has done this, and then we did a qualitative analysis afterwards with more users. I think it was around 50 users, and the results exactly matched. So the feeling from our user researcher, from UX designers that came from the qualitative analysis, exactly matched with the qualitative data. So, and that gives us kind of a proof that our methodology we have created to collect qualitative data really works. And so you can do both, and if you have the right tools and the right metrics, you get to the right results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Then there was another question regarding book recommendations, and in particular, if you can recommend the book Quantifying the User Experience by Jeff Zorro. Maybe one of you guys have already read it, or you have other recommendations.
I haven't read this book myself personally, so I can't really comment. I'm sure, it would potentially have, like all books, that you read it, what you're doing at the time, and then if there's anything that you need to quantify from the quantifying book, you can reach out to your network, I guess, to.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a little bit of a bad connection right now with Kim, but I'll post maybe then a follow-up question to you, Carolin, at this point. We have a question from the audience. How do you persuade or convince the other stakeholders that are collecting data and testing is important and crucial for product performance, even though the product solutions seem to be clear and simple. So why should you measure if your application is already good? I would summarize it.
I mean, this is always kind of a, yeah, not really objective view. If you say they are already clear, I mean, do you have evidence that is clear? Have you asked your user? Is it just the opinion of the management, of the development? So how do you know that it's already clear for the user if you don't measure it? So of course you can have, like I said, the operational data that tells you a lot of people use your application, or you have a good performance, but that doesn't mean that your user experience is good. So and this you can only know if you involve the user, if you ask the user. And of course, to convince the stakeholders, then it's going back to the topic of return on investment calculation. So, but of course, return on investment calculation makes it much easier also if you have already a kind of an overview of your strengths and weaknesses of your application. So if you measure your application, and for example, you get the information that interoperability, so the connecting the systems is a big issue for your users, even if you think you're completely fine connected, but the user have a problem with interoperability, for example, they have to switch between 3 different applications to collect data to finalize their task in an application. You can just easily calculate the return on invest. So what does it take the user to jump between these 3 applications? How much time does it take for them? And on the other hand, how much of time would be the invest, or in general the invest, to include or to combine, integrate the different systems, and you have a perfect return on invest. But of course, to give this picture where you should improve, where you should focus, you should measure. But the measuring of the application, this is really not a big investment. This works really easy with the right tools, so you can do that just with your user base, and this is a great basis for going further and for get the buy-in from stakeholders to improve the application further.
Mm-hmm.
I think we lost Kim, right?
Yeah, I'm afraid we lost Kim, but yeah, we have 2 questions left, one to Kim, one general one. So I guess we conclude with the last question to you, Caroline. Do you have a UX metrics dashboard for the top management? So you talked about UX score earlier, your own tooling. Does it include also dashboards for upper management?
Yeah, so yeah, we have a dashboard. So in this dashboard, we're combining or showing different levels, different aggregation levels of the information. So first of all, of course, all the information we have collected, all the metrics we have collected. So what was the response of our users? Categorized and grouped in our different categories of user experience. I have mentioned a few, so feedback, intuitive handling, smartness, and so on. So you get an overall score of your application or your process you have reviewed, but you get also a score of each single category. So you can compare the categories. You can directly visually see where your strengths and weaknesses. It's always important if you report to management to have an easy, understandable view of the results. And in this dashboard, we have also included other functionalities, for example, the benchmarking. So you can just add benchmarking data and compare it. You can have a trend if you review an application multiple times. So you can show your results in a trend visualization and see how your application evolved. Also add information like kind of a change log. What have you done? So what was the connection between the improvement you have done and the effect on the score. This is also part of this dashboard visualization, until the end of giving even recommendations based on your results. So you are scoring low in that category, you could potentially improve the category by doing this and that, by integrating this service, by doing this best practice. So with this dashboarding and analyzing of information, you can do really a lot to convince also management and stakeholders to go further now and act on this information.
So it's a combination of this one central dashboard for the CIO that can see like, how do the apps perform within my organization? What are the sweet spots? How do they
Also
perform?
that, yeah.
But also individual dashboards for all the applications where you can, directly take action and improve on the things that, you might still lack on, etc.
Yeah, right.
Cool. Thanks a lot. So I guess that concludes our panel discussion as of today. We learned a lot about like identifying, quantifying, communicating UX to all your stakeholders, and thanks a lot for all your input. It was a lot of fun. I guess our audience can reach out to both of you if they have additional questions, if they want to inform themselves about the tooling, about your best practices, if they need help in one way or another by you guys. But yeah, once again, thanks for joining today, and it was a lot of fun for me. And yeah, also to the audience, thanks for joining, and see you on our next panel discussion.
Thanks for having us.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.